I could fly into the sky so very high, just like a dragonfly. I'd fly above the trees, over the seas, in all degrees, to anywhere I please.
Good evening, everybody, and here we go for another rousing round of information and general mayhem. General mayhem? Yeah, okay.
Oh.
We'll have let's call it a little chat instead. Lottie's off tonight. The guy's out traipsing around in the bush, having a fun time camping and flying his drone. He did a little live stream earlier tonight, but he really didn't have a good signal to do it, but we caught a little bit of it. So, and how are you doing tonight, Doug?
I'm doing good. I did a quick flight earlier on after work, went out by Strathmore and zipped around a little bit, but it was getting windy out there, so I didn't stay out too long. I had to get back. So,
yeah.
But other than that, it was nice.
Only flying I managed to do today, I was doing a test flight for Kevin. Had a problem and our customer had a problem with the drone, so doing some test flights on that, and it's amazing what kind of problems you can have when you don't know how to fly a drone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I was amazed when I was out by Strathmore, the amount of crops that have already been knocked down, and they had the rows all lined up. So I was trying to eye up some fields that maybe I could get the grid pattern on and get some neat photos. But not tonight.
No. So anyway, tonight we got a couple of special guests that are going to be joining us. One of them you guys have met before, and neither one of these are any kind of a stranger to being on shows or even flying drones. Matter of fact, they've been chosen to be our guests tonight because they both fly all different kinds of drones, and our main topic tonight is going to be talking about all different alternatives and not just flying DJI and getting their valuable input on what they think about the other brands that they're flying. And so tonight, and I'm not going to use the typical YouTube phrase, and you guys will know what it is, so I'm not even going to say it, but without further delay, I'm going to bring in, I'd like to bring in Ron Brown. You guys haven't seen him before, but this gentleman you've seen, and that's Marcus from Idaho Quadcopter. Both these guys, very, very knowledgeable, and they, as I said, they fly many different brands. Good evening, gentlemen. How you doing?
Good evening, Lauren. Well, thank you.
Yeah, good evening. Doing well in Idaho as well.
Good. So, you guys were both flying recently. They've put out a few YouTube videos. Actually, you're both flying the FEMI, right?
I flew the Hubson, which is a competitive product to the FEMI this weekend, and Marcus flew the FEMI X8.
Okay, yeah.
Which they're very similarly priced, very similar feature set to both of them.
Yeah. So, tell us, which one do you like? Which one do you non-DJI? Which one's your preference of all the different drones that you fly?
So if I was going to rate, other than DJI, what drone would I fly? It would easy the Paradanafi.
Yeah.
I agree with Marcus. The best non. Well, I'm gonna pause this. The best non DJI drone I own is the Anafi at a budget price range. But if you're looking for a little bit more money, it's the Scudio 2 drone.
Oh, that's true. How could I forget
the Scudio 2? Not only is a competitor, but it does many things better than DJI's Mavic 2 series. Like as far as tracking and things like that, the Mavic 2 can't touch some of the things the Scudio does.
Actually, it was kind of interesting. I don't know if you watched it on Twitter or not, but there was quite a quite a little war of words, shall we say, going on between Brendan Schulman from DJI.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, I saw a little of that or whatever. Yeah.
Between him and the Skydio guys, and he brought up just a totally valid point. You know, it's like, well, realistically, it's not legal to fly the Skydio because you have to have full command and control at all times in the States, right? So,
well, guess what, Lauren? Just today I saw an article where the FFA is starting to give out permission to people that put in for it to fly beyond line of sight. So I just saw that note today.
That is only for police and fire, etc. Though, Ron. Yeah,
okay.
Safety personnel.
Right, but it's the first step.
It is. I totally agree.
Yeah, we've got a few companies up in Canada that are now getting their beyond line of sight, and it's fortunate that because we actually have one of our members of the group that you're talking to tonight actually has that, and it's not the easiest thing to do. It requires a track record of safety and procedures. So,
right,
but,
right, understood. So, but you make a valid point. Yeah, if you're flying the Scudio with a beacon, maybe you don't have full control in the terms that we usually connect full flight with a controller.
Yeah.
Well, if you're using active track on your Mavic Air 2, it's the same thing. So, you've got the controller in your hand, but you've got a controller in your hand with the Skydio too, whether it's the beacon, your iPhone, or the actual controller itself.
And Lauren,
we're really splitting hairs, I guess is what I'm saying.
If Lauren ever gets a chance to fly a Skydio too, just with the phone, that thing is remarkably capable just using your smartphone. I mean, remember the Mavic Pro 1, you could fly it with a phone, and Spark, some of those drones, but that doesn't compare to the experience you get flying the Scudio 2 with a phone. It's like a whole different ball game we're talking about. Would you agree, Marcus?
Totally agree. It's the only drone that I would be comfortable just using my phone to fly it with.
Have you guys tried out the Evo at all?
No,
the one or the two.
Hands on with the Autel Evo. I've always been curious, but I've never pulled the trigger yet. Do you like the Autel drones, Lauren?
I think that they've got great promise. There's, to be honest, I really wasn't impressed with them down at CES because I found when I started asking tough questions, they'd pass it off to another person in the group.
Lauren, that's exactly what happened to me. When I went there too, and I started asking questions about the drone. They knew nothing, and they'd say, "Oh, just like you said," they'd say, "Oh, well, you need to go talk to so and so or whatever." And you go, "Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
Why are you here in the booth then? If you can't answer questions, why are you standing here?"
Yeah, no, that. But I was kind of testing them whether maybe just me being an a-hole or something. But I'd ask them questions that I knew the answers to, And I wanted to see what answers they would give me, see if how well they knew their product. Mm-hmm. And as you know, there were some fairly high ups in Evo that were there, and they really didn't seem to know anything about their product.
It was amazing. Lauren, have you ever actually flown one?
No, I haven't. No.
So I haven't either. But a friend of mine, another reviewer by the name of Ryan Duvall, tells me he's going to loan me his for a while. So he's got the Evo 1, and he's going to send it to me just to fly it for a few days, and just so I can review it and kind of have an experience with it. So I'm looking forward to that. But really, we know that if we're talking about competitors or alternatives to DJI, it's Autel is right there, then Skydio, and like you guys both said, in a little different way, because Skydio's niche is a little bit different, right? And then and then that Paradenopi, from a pure consumer perspective, and a consumer affordable drone, that Parrot Anafi to me is probably the only one that you know it's competitor for the Mavic Air, I suppose.
Yes. And the Anafi, you know, it takes hits. It doesn't have the range that we're used to with the DJI drones with the OcuSync 1 or 2. And it, you know, it doesn't have outstanding battery life. It just has about 20 minutes or, you know, tops. But what it does is its camera is just a cut above the drones, like the Xenos, the Femis. You know, I've heard people say differently, but I think it's a cut above the Mavic Mini also.
It will shoot in HDR. Its parlor trick is the camera will look up.
Yeah.
You never see the props in the frame with the Anafi ever, the way it's
No matter how fast you fly.
The app is well, Ron and I both described it before as a feature-rich drone. It's just got a ton of features.
It's a DJI Go 4 competitor. I could even tell you it's maybe a little better in that you don't have to dig down through as many menus to get to a crucial setting that you need. Things aren't buried, nested down in the app as far as some of the stuff in the Go 4 app is. And it has, you know, it has this, I forget what the sensor size is. Your typical, 1 1/3 or whatever. But it does have a 20 megapixel camera, so your photos are 20 megapixel photos. And it does real well photos. It does, of course, it does DNGs and JPEGs. And on the video side, it has a D-Log color profile. And I mean, it's really flat. It's flatter than the Mavic 2's D-Log. So, I mean, in other words, if you want to grade, this thing's that flat that you can almost do anything you want with it.
The other thing that's worth mentioning is the flight controls on it. So it's probably, to me, as close to DJI quality flight controls as I've seen. A lot of people complain about the controller. Both Ron and I think we're fine with it, but just to bring it up, a lot of people don't care for the form factor of the controller.
And most of those people have only flown DJI products, where Mark's I have flown many different drones and many different controllers. So we're not as locked in on the DJI controller as people, you know, as a lot of people are. So that's no knock on people that only fly DJI, but they're just not experienced flying maybe 5-6 different controllers like we are.
The Anafi kind of really shot themselves in the foot when it comes to Canada, because there's one dealer in Canada and they won't take on any new dealers. You have to be a sub dealer through that dealer, which, you know, I know there are several dealers that wanted to become an Anafi dealer, but they don't want to become a sub dealer because they're bigger than the guy that's the dealer, you know?
Right.
Sort of Toronto?
Yeah, dealer in Toronto, yeah.
Yeah.
So sadly, it doesn't look like Parrot is going to do anything more with the Anafi. So really, Parrot has already said that they're done with consumer drones. So the Anafi is really a dead end, but it's worth mentioning if somebody's interested in an alternative to DJI.
We know how the business world goes. The current CEO says this, but the next CEO may say, hey, we need to get back in the consumer game again. So for right now, they're dead on the consumer side. But you can still readily find the Anafi out there on Amazon and other sites. And you know, it hasn't been that long since they've done firmware updates. So, I mean, it's not like it's been abandoned for years. I mean, I'm going to say in the last 6 months, it's received some kind of a update. And you know, batteries and the drone's still available. Not that I would, you know, recommend anybody just getting it, but sometimes you can pick it up on Amazon for a little over $400. And at that price point, you're probably, if you're only interested in photography and video, you don't, you know, if you're a photographer and you go to the site where you're taking your pictures, your video, you're not flying 2 miles away to the location. You know, the Anafi's a very good camera drone, much better than the Femi or the Xeno, and I would say even the Mavic Mini, just because it has all the bells and whistles that the Fly app doesn't have for the Mini. It's still good. It's still a good alternative nowadays. If you're really on a tight budget and cannot even afford a Mavic Air 2. But as I always say, any of these drones we talk about, if you could just save a little bit more money, save a few more paychecks, and just get the Mavic Air 2, you should do that.
Okay,
I knew where you were going
we're
with that.
supposed to be talking about non-DJI tonight, gentlemen.
Well, I did just ramble on about the Anafi, and of course, I want to throw in again, which I said before. And if you live in an area where there's a lot of flight restrictions, that the DJI drone will not take off, the Anafi won't have those issues like the Autel drone.
And how about the FEMIs? Those have no restrictions either, do they?
No flight restrictions whatsoever.
There's no flight restrictions on the FEMI at all, and it of those other Chinese brands, the kind of the lower end ones. I'm not sure how you describe it, but Ron and I always call them bargain drones. The FEMI is really kind of the cream of that crop right now. Now,
and a lot of that to do with the price point. Also, it has the sharpest price point of any drone in its class.
Yeah, it's around $400 US, and you said it's much more than that in Canada, Lauren. I know, but it is. Listen, I always tell people, don't think that you're getting a bargain Mavic, because you're not. But it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's still pretty good. The camera's not quite as good. The flight controls aren't quite as good. The features in the app and stuff aren't quite what we're used to with DJI, but it's pretty damn good, and it flies good, and it'll take good video, and I mean it's a drone I can recommend.
Which one do you guys prefer, the 2018 or the 2020?
Funny you should mention that, because I flew them both back to back today.
Yeah,
and
that's
Ron,
why I'm asking.
yeah. So Ron and I have had this discussion about the FPV feed on the 2018 version. I had sent my 2018 version to Ron, and he flew it for a while to get to know it. But they improved the connection. They don't call it OcuSync. They've got their own name for their connection.
Like Hudson calls theirs the Lee's operating system.
That's Hudson, yeah. I can't remember what FEMI calls it, but let me tell you, they really improved it on the 2020 version. I flew it about 1.5 kilometers out over the lake today, and it was solid FPV, solid strong signal the whole way up and back. I took the 2018 version. I flew the same route, and by the time I got out about 1 kilometer or so, I had good control. I had a good control signal, but the FPV was starting to get mottled and would break up and stutter a little bit.
Marcus makes a good point. When you get the 2018 version, not all that far away from you, the feedback you're getting on your monitor, I think it's supposed to be 720p, but it looks like about 240p by the time you don't get it too far away from you. Where, like you said, it's improved in 2020, and the Hubsan Zeno 2. When I flew that, the video I put out today, when I made that, I mean, it was solid, good looking 720p video all the way out. Excuse me.
Yeah, so the Zeno 2, I really had high hopes for that drone, and it really plays in the same sandbox as the FEMI. It's very similar feature set, very similar specs, but mine has just been troublesome. It's not a very stable drone. It's all over the place, and you can cope with that. You can, but when you're used to flying a Mavic Mini or a Mavic Air 2 or a Mavic 2 that'll just hang there like it's hanging from a string, it's disconcerting.
And let's tell Laura and Doug the dirty secret about drones like the FEMI and the Hubsan and so on. No two are exactly alike. Like Laura and Doug can both order the FEMI X8. Lawrence could fly real good, and Doug's could be a little iffy. Something could be wrong with it. Like Bill, the drone reviewer, he got the same FEMI works, and they were both May of 2020 from probably the same batch from the factory. And Bill got a bad one, and Marcus got a good one.
Yeah.
That Femi was that does the quite a bit of tulip bowling, wasn't it?
No, that's the Xeno.
Okay, or the Xeno. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Xeno, yeah. It's
Well, Marcus does, but mine doesn't. That's what we're trying to tell you. No, these type of drones, no two are alike.
Why is that?
quality control. I'm sure it's just QC. It comes down to
or
QC.
lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
After a couple of firmware updates, mine takes off, hovers real good. I can stand there, walk around it, hovers real good, you know. But Marcus's is all over the place, almost hits them.
Well, that drone has tried to kill me before. It's like lunged for me.
It's heard you talk about it on the air too much.
But what happened with it today? So I took the Xeno 2 with me today as an alternative to compare the two Femis, right? To give a third version and compare video. Ron put out a really nice video on it. It kind of inspired me. I thought, okay, I want to take that Xeno 2. I got it clear out over the lake, and the screen went dark. FPV went out completely. So I had to fly it home without FPV, and got it home. But and I think I know what's wrong with it. There's a ribbon cable that goes to the gimbal that is very commonly goes back.
Yes. It's like a $10 part, but it takes you 2 months to order from China. And Marcus refers to my nice video on the Hubson, and he tells the whole thing. When I'm flying away from the sun, when the sun's at the back of the drone, video looks real nice. Like, you know, it's a little bit of dynamic range there, looks real good. You could almost think for a minute, hey, is that maybe a DJI drone? But as soon as I turn that camera around and face, you know, the sun, and I don't mean looking right at the sun, but just the general direction of the sun, it's just exposure's blowing out. It doesn't matter how much I move the shutter knob or whatever, it's not coming back. And I even have an ND filter on it. It just doesn't handle, you know, any type of bright exposure well. So it's a tale of two drones. Fly it away from the sun, looks pretty darn good. Fly towards the sun, it's a whiteout. Looks like Christmas time or you know, blizzard has hit town.
How about you, Doug? Have you flown anything since other than DJI?
Nope. Well, in the beginning, before I had any DJIs, I had a lot of those entry-level drones, which really taught me how to fly, because you have to hang on for dear life to keep those things flying. And then eventually when I got the DJI, then I realized, wow, like this was easy to fly compared to what I had been flying. So
Doug makes a very good point. Like, I started out in like a little SEMA X5, and if you could fly that thing around the backyard and not get it stuck in a tree and not totally destroy it, that takes more piloting skills than flying any DJI drone.
Yeah, you're flying by the seat of your pants and hanging on for dear life.
And the wind, and you know, if a wind gust comes up, you have no control. You better learn how to like kind of glide with the wind for a few seconds until that gust goes away.
And my wife had brought me a drone for Father's Day, and I put it in the backyard, and I think I had 45 seconds on the drone, and I put it back in the box and sold it in the garage sale probably a year later. It was too much. I couldn't hang on to it. It was all over the place, and before I took out the neighbor's flowers, I thought I'd better just put this away. And
you need to, like I started with RC helicopters, and that was before they added all the stabilization and stuff in on them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's you know, two hands on sticks, and you wish you had a third hand to wipe the sweat off your brow. You know, it was full-time flying, and then. I got into the drones, and the first drone I got wasn't really bad, and then I got into a lot better one. Well, it was like just cat's meow at the time, garbage by today's standards. But
which drone was that?
The Blade 350 QX3.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with Blade at all, but
we have a lot of people in our group that had they had a drone called the Blade Chroma, which they said was kind of a Mavic alternative.
The Blade Chroma was the successor to the Blade 350 QX3.
Okay.
Because I was almost thinking about going with that one, and then because that one came out shortly before the Phantom 3 series.
Okay.
And I was thinking about getting that, or I was started getting curious at that Phantom 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, no, I like having my video all in one. I don't want the have to go out and buy a GoPro. That's the word.
Right.
I didn't want to have to go out and buy a GoPro, so I just stuck with that blade until as soon as the Phantom 3 came out. Boom, I was there, and I haven't looked back since.
Our guest Monday night was Mike Wright. I'm pretty sure he told us that the blade crumb he has that was made by Unique.
Yeah,
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think he's the one who told us that in the show that was made by Unique.
Yeah. Huh.
Have you ever owned a Unique drone, Doug or Lauren?
Never owned one. Flown one quite a bit.
Oh, did you like it?
It was very good for its time because I flew an older one, and quite frankly, it was better than DJI at the time. But by the time they got to the Phantom 3, no. What the heck was that one? H500, I think it was. But it was a darn good drone. Problem is the old trying to update firmware on those things was just a bear. You got to put this jumper in here, and then you got to hook that up, and yeah. So
Marcus, we did tell Lauren about how you had to update the old Xeno 1.
Yeah, the original Xeno. Yeah, I mean they had plug it into your computer, and it was
Had
one
to be
file at a time, about 3 different files. Actually, the Xeno 1, it took them a while to get some of the bugs out of it, but once they did it, I've had more fun with that little drone than it was at the time $299. You can commonly buy them now for $250, and it actually works pretty good. It takes 4K, 30 frames per second. Now the bit rate is low enough that it's not the quality of video that we're used to with even like the Mavic Mini, but it's pretty good. And if all somebody has is $250, that's the drone I always recommend, not the Xeno 2, the original Xeno.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna have to move on because we're gonna be running into overtime.
Okay.
Just so you know, Ron, we only run a half-hour show. So
Right. So I'll keep it short then.
Well, actually, I'm just going to move on to our next quick little topic. Somebody was asking about drone maintenance other than just checking the blades. Like what should you do? So I'm going to share with you guys one. Basically, what I do. Mine's a little bit different, but I'm used to being a maintenance controller, so that's how I made my living. But following air data here is pretty good idea. Their 20 flight inspection is pretty good, which basically, yes, you're going to be checking your blades, but looking for cracks. Visually inspect and make sure there's no screws missing. Make sure you ain't got a screw loose. Well, that's usually the pilot. But and
Marcus is fantastic checking for cracks.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
And then moving up to the extended one, it's a little bit more intense in the fact that there's more things to do. You're going to do your basic, but do all your calibrations again. You should have done your calibrations before your first flight. Well, basically just doing all those calibrations all over again. And then there's the extended, which is quite a bit more intense. If anybody wants this, I can make it available in the group. But now you're checking your sensors and your vents and stuff like that. And it's also a good time that if you haven't done it in the meantime, recalibrate your vision sensors as well. And then moving on to batteries, they have, you can choose one of three things, either charges, flights, or airtime. Personally, because I used to deal with this, I recommend doing it on the number of charge cycles you've got. So, and basically every 20 charge cycles, do a deep cycle on your batteries. In other words, run your batteries down to around 8%. Don't run them any lower than 5%. You'll start hurting the battery if you go lower than that, but run it down to 8%.
And how often did you say to do this, Lauren?
I do it every 20 charge cycles.
Okay.
So, and then, let the battery cool down. I highly recommend letting it sit for an hour before you recharge it again, because you want everything back to kind of a stable thing. And then there's the full battery service, which basically is the same thing, but you're also going to do a visual inspection of the battery, make sure there's no swelling or anything like that, and then make sure the battery cases aren't cracked or anything. And finally, the last thing would be cleaning the contacts. Should clean those contacts on both the drone and the battery.
And how would you recommend to clean those contacts, Lauren?
Myself, I use contact cleaner. You can get that at pretty much any good electronics store. Contact cleaner and I use two things: either a Q-tip, or, believe it or not, a dollar bill works great. The old dollar bills, not the new plastic ones, but the old paper dollar bills, they actually work very good for cleaning contacts.
Well, how about that?
Yeah. And you do that every 160 charge cycles. So, it's not very often you have to do that one, but
okay. Mark, you don't keep a drone that long to worry about 160 cycles.
Yeah. Hey, Lauren, I've got a question for you you were talking about calibrating the optical sensors on the drone.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I have never done that on any of my drones. Is it really that critical?
Well, depends if you like your drones running into things.
Yeah.
Well, but Mark is above the Snake River out there. It's not a whole lot to hit, Lauren.
Well, that's true. That's true. But realistically, the DJI drones it takes maybe 2-3 minutes to calibrate your vision. You're going to use your DJI Assistant, the appropriate one for your model of aircraft. Use your DJI Assistant. You go into the calibration, and you'll get a bunch of dots on the screen, and it steps you right through that, on what to do. You're going to be following with your drone. You're just going to kind of follow it around the screen, right? And just follow the directions on there. And usually it takes 2 to 3 minutes. So
let me ask you this, Lauren. Have you ever seen a drone where those vision sensors were far enough out of calibration that it would have created an issue?
On a regular basis.
I'll be darned.
Lonnie, who's not here tonight, actually had to send his Air 2 back because he had one of his vision sensors fail. So,
and Lauren, he's with us in the chat.
Yep, he is. Yep. And yeah, so as he said, it's very easy to do, right?
Okay,
the biggest thing is you're going to be chasing the dots around the screen. The big thing is don't move the drone around. You just turn the drone or tilt the drone from the center location, right? So
sounds like a video for us, Marcus, where we get a DJI drone out and just do that.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah. Yep. It's like I say, it's easy to do, but usually I recommend it on that mid-range when you're calibrating all your other sensors, right? So every 100 flights or 1,000 minutes of flight.
1,000 minutes.
How did Lonnie find out his sensor wasn't working?
Yeah, Lonnie said left
You
sensor
can
failed,
actually,
but they
you can
replaced
actually
the
see
warning.
it. Well, you get a warning, but you can actually see it when you go into vision calibration. It'll show your sensors, and one of his was dark. So, yeah, DJI replaced it under warranty, so not a big deal. And he just got it back.
Huh. And also, Lonnie said his first drone was the Phantom 2 Vision Plus, which had its built-in camera. You didn't have to rely on the GoPro with that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, that was the first, like, you know, I'm going to say the first really good drone that had the gimbal, the 3-axis gimbal. I think the FPV feed, but it wasn't. You know, it wasn't 1,000 meters. It was like 500 meters or something. So it didn't have great FPV rating, but it was a start.
So, Ron, was that one old enough that it had the crank starter?
No, it had 3 on a tree to get it going, Marcus.
Okay, so anyways, next week we got another special guest coming in. We got Matt Matthews from Blackhawk Aerial. And we're going to be talking about those items that people wanted to know a couple of weeks ago. And where's my notes? Which part of that was the geofencing unlocking, as well as the talking about the controlled airspace and a few other items like that. Flying in controlled airspace. But he'll be in to join us next week, and we're going to catch up on all those questions. And hopefully everybody gets educated just a little bit more. So anything you'd like to add tonight, Doug?
I'm just listening, watching the big show tonight.
Any closing thoughts there, Ron?
Just that, you know, we spoke about the Scudio earlier, and our good friend Al Duran, he had an unfortunate situation where his Scudio did not return to home and land in the water. But a firmware update came out today. Well, I don't say today, but it came out recently. I did it today, and it had an app update that came out a couple of days ago. So the combination of that firmware update and the app update should solve any of those issues that it was having, because Scudio got in touch with Al and told him it wasn't his fault. They were sending him a new drone because it was a problem with the firmware or the app. But both of them have been updated. So just FYI with anybody that has a Scudio out there listening, make sure you go and do the current updates, the firmware and the app, so you don't wind up like Al Duran with yours slowly going down in the James River. So
yeah, in the group I normally post whenever there's firmware updates, but somehow I missed that one. So
they sneak it in on his pants bar.
Yeah. Final thoughts there, Marcus.
Well, Lauren, other than to thank you for having me on tonight, this was a good discussion, and anything to talk about drones. I just love talking about drones, just like you guys do. But the point being, talking about alternatives to DJI, the fact is there are alternatives. There definitely are. There's caveats probably with all of them, and there's probably a reason that DJI has, what is it, something like 70% of the consumer market share. It's some unbelievable number like that. So, but there are alternatives, and there are drones that work. And what I primarily focus on, and Ron does too, is I'm looking at people that don't want to spend the money that you spend on a DJI product, and
high-end DJI product like that.
Yeah. So we just try and present them as honestly as we can, with the pluses and minuses, etc. And there are some decent alternatives out there. You know, like we said, the Anafi, the Skydio, Autel, etc. So, and that FEMI, I'd put that in that group as well. So,
and Lauren, Marcus, I always get constantly asked the question by subscribers: should I get the Mavic Mini, or should I get the FEMI or something like that? And that's always a tough question to answer, because
it's a use case.
Some people are looking for long range flight. Some people are looking for long flight time. Some people are looking for a good camera. It's just a hard question to ask. You probably get asked the same type of question, Lauren, about different drones.
On a regular basis. You know, it's like, what should I buy? And question is really, what do you want to do? Right? What you want to do is going to decide what you need to buy. You know, and if you're going to just fly it once or twice a year, kind of a thing, don't go spending $2,000 or $3,000 on a frickin' drone, right? It's you're crazy. You know, you might have the money to do it, but why? You know, and not only that, if you're only flying it, 50 feet away, you don't need something with a 10-kilometer range. You know, so but yeah. So just like you say, it's use case based. But everybody, when you get the chance, check out these two gentlemen on YouTube. Marcus has got his Idaho Quadcopter channel, and Ron has just got the Ron Brown channel.
If you want to find me, just type Ron Brown drone and I'll pop up number one. If you just type Ron Brown in, you'll get a million people.
Million Ron Brown.
Type Ron Brown drone in.
Yeah.
Pop right up.
So on that note, I guess we're going to call it an evening. Thanks for coming in, gentlemen. Have a great evening, and hopefully we shall see you again soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
That's all, folks.